Welcome to Orchestrating Impact, stories from the heart of New Jersey Symphony. I'm your host, Jamara Wakefield. In this transformative podcast, we dive into the profound intersection of music and community connections, delving deep into the heart of the New Jersey Symphony's mission. Join me on a captivating journey as we unravel the untold stories of those whose lives have been touched by the Symphony's work. I'll be joined by Stefon Harris, a true luminary in the world of jazz. Beyond being a remarkable musician, Stefon stands out as an accomplished composer, mentor, and dedicated educator. In our conversation, we explore the profound impact the New Jersey Symphony has had in his life. My brother, Stefon Harris, I am so happy to be here with you and spend some time chatting about all things music and artistry, and of course, the New Jersey Symphony.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and every day I wake up full of love and joy and gratitude for music. So I'm always excited to talk about it, to make magic in music, and just share with as many people as I possibly can.
I love that. I'm always here for gratitude. Can we kick this off, and can you talk to our listeners about your personal journey as an artist and what experiences you've had that have transformed you?
Wow, there have been so many. First of all, I really think that artistry lives inside of us. I think you are basically born with a feeling and a natural inclination towards expression. And what we spend most of our lives doing is cultivating the skills to become more articulate. I don't know that the message actually changes. I don't know that the gift changes over life, but I do think the studying, it just helps us to unlock and be more articulate with that gift and share with more and more people. So for me, my journey began, I would say, with the Black church. My mother's a minister, so I grew up in the church, and my first experiences with music were transformative for me because I basically would go to church and someone would stand up to testify.
Come on now.
And they would just say, listen, I want to tell the congregation that my brother is not doing well. And everybody would say, it's going to be all right. And she'd come back the next week and say, I want to let you know he's feeling better.
Okay.
And I just want to thank you. And all of a sudden the chords would just come in the right key. And instead of speaking just with language, she would start to sing her testimony. So my earliest experiences with music was that the music is there to serve the narrative of the people. It's not about watching an artist on stage. Music has a function in our lives. So I fell in love with watching music just take a story and it became the springboard to amplify those narratives that were on the hearts and minds of people. So my initial understanding of music was definitely more functional. It was much more about culture. It was definitely rooted in emotion and in feeling. So I think starting off that way has informed everything that I've chosen to do throughout my life. And there have been many other transformative people and experiences along the way.
It sounds like you're saying that music really is alive the same way we're alive, with emotion, with feeling, with body, with temperature, with cadence, with tempo, with everything that we embody.
I mean, music is just a reflection of who we are. I mean, it's just a bunch of vibrations, right?
That's right.
These instruments are a bunch of metal and wood. They're now some in the digital space. There's some zeros and ones.
Right.
But for the most part, we're organizing these vibrations to tell our personal stories. And just like any field of study, we have to be of service to society with the art that we're creating. If you're creating something and it's not connecting with people, it's never the audience's fault. It's our responsibility as artists to articulate emotion that people see themselves in, right? Because you think about what we study. We study the science of organizing sound, of organizing movement in order to represent what's on the hearts and minds of people, because many people don't have the skill set necessarily to articulate what's on their hearts and minds. And when you carry deep emotions and you don't have an outlet, it can turn into suffering for most people. And then I think what an artist does in the ideal state, one of the assets that we bring to the table is that we tell those stories of other people so that they become seen in the world. And I always say to be seen is to be loved, right? To be in a situation where you don't see your voice represented on television, on the stage, in your own communities is devastating. So artists throughout history have always been the griots who breathe life into the stories of others.
I love that you bring so much compassion and empathy for others when you talk about music and your path. Can you tell me about your connection to the symphony and how that entangles with all of this?
Well, it's interesting. So I started off in the church and I didn't play. I was just observing.
Mm.
And then when I taught myself to read music at a very young age because I was just obsessed. I couldn't get enough of it. So I would go to the library and just take out a book, and I went home and just put it on the piano, and I'd see an arrow pointing to a key on the piano and it said it was C. I'd look down and I just kept picking at it. And eventually I learned to read music. So when I went to elementary school, I started to take lessons, but they were just offering classical music at that time. There was no jazz in the curriculum.
Right.
So my first formal training was around classical music. And I just fell in love with orchestral music. There was something about having the experience of being on stage with 60, 70 other musicians and feeling that sense of broad community. Like you play one note and it felt like you were playing all 60 instruments. It just was such a beautifully...
The collective experience
Oh
of
my
it,
goodness. Right? It was transformative because you were able to relinquish your own ego for a period of time. So many times we walk through the world and it's a defense mechanism. We all need it, but to survive, you tend to hyper-focus on yourself. But the reality is we are all deeply connected. And I think orchestral music provides an opportunity for you to let go of the ego as a participant and really experience the powerful beauty that exists in the collection of brilliant minds.
So in addition to the collective energy, the spirit of the moment and being in the room, the way the music fills up the room and really like fills up our bodies at the same time, what else do you think is unique about symphonic music?
Well, I mean, it's music that does an amazing job of telling stories, right? I think one of the things that I gravitated to was that it challenged me to see myself in a broader way than I was used to, right? To play a piece of Mozart required me to pull a part of myself up that I wasn't necessarily using. It didn't make me a more sensitive human being, but I think performing music, and particularly the challenge of music that I wasn't familiar with, it gave me permission to move more intuitively through life and to lead with my holistic self in every situation that I encounter. So I think it's not just unique to classical music, but I think the amount of detail that goes into composing and all the nuances, it really challenges you to dig deep personally to express yourself.
So given that the orchestra has played such a profound role in music in general, has played a profound role in giving you permission to release parts of yourself into the world, to experience humanity in a very, I would say, visceral way. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the role and responsibility of an orchestra in relation to community?
Well, it's ever changing, right? As society continually evolves, the philosophy that an orchestra carries needs to evolve. All of us, regardless of our field, need to be of service. So when I think about the value of music in general, I think for the most part, music is actually not necessary for survival. I mean, we need to eat, we need to drink,
right.
But if music didn't exist, our species would still survive. So it's likely that one of the primary values that our art form has brought to our species is the fact that it causes us to gather in large numbers. It brings us together and creates a sense of community, which in the long run is an essential part of our existence. So I think of contemporary challenges that orchestras and jazz organizations face is you always have to be dedicated to the idea that primarily my job is to create community. And if I have that mindset, the work that I produce is always going to be coming from a place of trying to bring people together and try to celebrate the collective as opposed to hyper-focusing on individual talent.
That's really beautiful. I mean, when I think of music and musicians and singers, I think of communication. I think of calling people together. Mm-hmm. I think of we're over here, right? Mm-hmm. So here's the sound, here's this drum. So I love the way you put that in terms of we're here anyway, and the music only brings us together in the best way.
Absolutely. I think of the orchestral platform is so incredibly beautiful. And one of the ways that I hope that it continues to evolve is that it becomes more open towards articulating a variety of cultural perspectives. Because it is one of the most beautiful inventions that mankind has ever come up with. But it has been limited in terms of who's had the opportunity to utilize that platform. And I think part of the future for orchestras is going to be centered around the idea of respecting that platform and its power, but also understanding it as a tool to uplift multiple voices.
I love that. Stefon, as you know, the New Jersey Symphony has featured the work of Daniel Bernard Romain, DBR, as a resident artistic catalyst. Can you share your thoughts on his work and the impact it's had on the symphony's artistic direction, specifically the work titled I Am a White Person Who blank Black People?
Well, DBR, first of all, he's an extremely creative human being. What a brilliant musician, but what a courageous human being. That is the element that is most striking for me. And I love that he has never shied away from consistently telling the message that is most important to him, but not being limited to any one format. He can speak in many languages as it pertains to music, including dance and beyond music. So I love the thought of having an artist like DBR have access to a symphony orchestra and be able to really play in the world of organized sound unapologetically and uplift the voices of his community. So I think it's a really fantastic step in the right direction for symphonic organizations. And he's the right person for the moment, too.
I agree. Can you expand a little bit more on the words courage and the words access? Because I think both of them are critical towards impact. This stuff doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
Either one, having courage or having access.
That's right. So as we go back to the notion of the function of art in society, music, I'm obsessed with music. I got up at 4:30 this morning. I've already practiced a whole bunch of hours every single day. This is, like I said, I wake up with joy, bright-eyed, ready to study. So the science of music is transformative, and it's something that I wish everyone could have the opportunity and the joy to explore. But that's one element of music. The other element that we talked about before is really about bringing people together to create a sense of community. So when I think of DBR and I think about the work that he's doing, I think it takes courage to step beyond just being an excellent musician, because he could execute perfect technique and write music that had lots of harmonic flourishes and things of that nature, and not have a focus on community, not have a focus on articulating what's on his heart.
Exactly.
And also, he's telling stories that are deeply personal for him and for the broader community that make other people uncomfortable. And that's not an easy thing. And he's a bit of a singularity in the field, right? There aren't a lot of people of color who've had a lot of access to these spaces, who have the courage to stand up. And when you do get that opportunity, again, you have the option, of course, to just stand up and tell a great technical story that might impress people. It takes a special human being who can seize the moment and really understand that they are beautiful, that they are valuable, and they deserve to be in these types of spaces. So I'm excited, thrilled, and over the moon that he's a part of the organization.
What lessons can you offer our listeners as a musician, as a father, as a partner, on how to cultivate that courage? Because the courage to create art, certainly, like Baldwin has talked about that. All of our elders have talked about that. And some people listening may not be musicians, right? And yet I would argue that we all need that same level of courage that DBR has, that you have when you're performing and curating. What is that thing, and how can we all tap into it?
Wow, that's a difficult question. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with self-love, right? And quieting the myriad of narratives that are floating around. Part of the beauty of leading a life that is motivated through empathy is, I think, the first step in trying to be an empathetic human being is quieting your ego. So ego can be, a lot of people think of it as from a space of arrogance, but your ego can also cause you pain. It can also make you insecure.
Right.
But to be empathetic is to quiet your own ego and just be an observer, right? Without judgment. So in order to really be courageous, I know that for me, I constantly battle with the idea of not defining myself and definitely not allowing any of the external narratives. For me, every single day, I define myself based on what I'm doing that day. Right? If I get up and I run 10 miles, I'll say I'm the type of man who runs 10 miles every day. Now, I may not have done it for 6 months, but if I do it that day, I'm going to tell myself I'm defined by my actions every day. So I'm in control of how I feel and the message that I want to put forth in the world. So that helps me, I think, be courageous and also knowing that there isn't a right or wrong answer. Like, particularly with jazz and Black culture, I think our highest value in general when it comes to art is definitely not about technical issues. I think our highest value is really authenticity. We respect the artists who are real, who are telling the stories from their hearts, who are telling the stories of their people. It's almost like you get elevated in Black culture when you represent lots of voices, regardless of your technical fluency, right? So all of these things are, I think, assets, particularly from jazz and Black culture, that I think are going to benefit culture at large, including the orchestral culture as they become increasingly more inclusive.
That's a great point, because the New Jersey Symphony has actually a really rich history of sitting at the intersection of jazz and Euroclassical music. Why do you think that's important for us in terms of as a community, as a collective, as a city? Why is that important?
The music is only valuable if it serves to articulate what's happening in the world right now. Because 500 years from now, someone may be interested in what we create, but they're not going to be interested because they want to be entertained. They're going to be interested because they want to know something about themselves. They're going to want to learn something about the journey that their species took to get to that point 500 years from now. So our value as artists, as organizations, is to document the world as it is right now. And in this country, we are diverse, right? We don't always live together in the same communities, but we have a myriad of voices that have beautiful messages to share. So I think the most impactful music organizations, arts organizations, are going to be the ones that actually create a safe space for all those voices to come together and actually articulate the potential of American democracy. Not only where we are right now, but art can create a platform that really can show us how to deal with disparate ideas, to show us that two people who completely disagree may be absolutely necessary for us to find the truth that lives in the middle. Both those voices are valid. And that becomes very, very clear in art. So it makes no sense in my mind that we would have classical, jazz, R&B, and we don't all understand that as being under the same umbrella of empathy, of expression, and that every voice is valid.
I love that you're saying, hey, we deserve to exist in the future. All of these voices, all of this music, all of this community, all of this love deserves to be in the future. And we're creating that archive for possibility now.
And the thing is, when we quiet our egos, it doesn't matter what we think. All of these voices do exist. And if we want to understand who we are as a collective species, we have to understand all of the parts that make us whole. And again, that's one of the assets that we bring to the table globally as artists. There's so many communities around the world that someone would never want to engage with if it was about political philosophy or religion, but you'll try the food. You may try the fashion.
Correct.
You may listen to the music.
That's right.
It's the art that first invites you in to a spiritual space that is beyond your ego. Doesn't matter what you think. There are things that happen in your brain and in your body that are happening so quickly on a neurological level that you don't have time to think about it. It's bigger than your ego. Our relationship to music is much bigger than ego.
You better preach.
It's my mama preaching through me.
You better tell him. You better say that. No, I love it. I love it. I want to talk about this idea of being an observer of an orchestra, being an observer of music, and being a participant. And how have you moved back and forth, and how can others move back and forth? The New Jersey Symphony is really interested in people being a participant in this work, a participant in this story. So what are your thoughts on those words?
Well, that's a great question, because I think they're both valid. The idea of an observer can be risky, because if people are just going to watch something and it's intriguing, but they don't feel connected to it, it's likely that it's going to be novel. They'll do it once, it's something that's on your calendar. Oh, that was an interesting experience, and they move on. But the ideal scenario is that when you're observing something, you're seeing yourself in what it is that you're observing, right? You're seeing what you would want to be able to do, right? You're feeling your own humanity manifesting on stage. I mean, it's what happens in a movie. I think of a movie like Black Panther.
Right.
When that movie came out, I saw it several times with my kids. It was really critical that they saw themselves as superheroes. It wasn't just a great story. I wanted my kids to see their potential, their humanity, and the types of films and books, literature that I read and observe is for the same reason. And the same thing is true of the music. So I think we have to have a narrative around all music that is inclusive of the narrative of the observer, so that it's not just that I'm some genius artist, I wrote this piece, some great idea that I came up with, but it's meaningless to the audience. That's the science side, and it has a place.
That's right.
But perhaps we need institutions that support the exploration of the science of music, which can be distinct from organizations that support music's role in creating community.
I'm really interested in the word genius. And from your angle, how do you think we can honor the talent, skill, practice of folks who pour their life into making sure that they know those chords and they know how to play and they're aligned, right? How do we honor that while also moving beyond the idea that this work only happens because of one person?
Right. Well, that's another great question. I do think it goes back to this idea of the value and the purpose of art. If we remind ourselves and we have a collective narrative that fundamentally it is about telling stories. It's not about your mastery of the craft. Your mastery of the craft is a given, right? We all have thousands and thousands of hours. Like I told you, I practiced several hours this morning already, every day. So that's a given. But I think putting instruments and the science of harmony and rhythm in the hands of young people, but then empowering them to use those tools in whatever way they deem necessary, and then validating that, right? That's going to go a long way in creating a situation where a young person can come to an orchestral concert and actually see their own ambitions reflected in it. It's not going to be through challenging people to imitate something. Right? There's a lot that you can learn from that, and that's part of the journey. But I think when someone has a set of tools and they're using it and they feel alive and they feel inspired and they're using those tools to sing their truth, and then they see someone else who's from a totally different culture use those same tools and amplify their voice in a way that's even more articulate, that's inspiring. That's a situation where I see myself. I want to learn more of that because it's going to help me tell my story. So it's a fascinating balance. They're all valid perspectives. It's just a matter of alignment with where we are as a society. It's not up to the individual leadership to decide what direction. The word genius is fascinating. I think of geniuses as visionaries, and I think vision is the right word because geniuses walk among all of us. The difference is a genius is looking at the same tree that you and I are looking at, but they can see something that we can't see, right? They see a tree, but then they see the dragon that's lurking on the inside, right? And then they cultivate the skills to paint that dragon for others to see. But they're normal people, right? We just haven't given everyone the skills that they need, the craft in whatever field of the arts it is to actually articulate what it is that they can see.
So as you know, the New Jersey Symphony has a rich history of diversity and inclusion. What impact do you think orchestras have in diversifying the music landscape?
Well, that's a great question. And I draw a clear distinction between diversity and inclusion. What we need is inclusion. That's what is going to help us become more authentic and be of a greater service to society. Diversity is also important. If we're not in the spaces, then you can't have inclusion. But it's very important to not create situations where we're in the spaces, but we're there to serve someone else's narrative. And when I think about the residency with DBR, I think that's a great example of allowing someone to come into the space and bring their authentic self. And in the process, the orchestra is actually broadening its community. It's broadening the people who are willing to come and experience, because again, more people are going to be able to see themselves in the story that's being told. As that success story continues to grow, it will inevitably have an impact on other communities. So it's really about us having conviction about the value of inclusion beyond diversity and really opening up our sense of purpose to really be about telling everyone's story. Music is just a platform that no one owns. And we're at our best when we're singing the truth about the whole of who we are.
I love that. You mentioned your private lessons as a young man. And I'm thinking about the young people who are playing and learning and having access to the music here by way of the New Jersey Symphony and in Newark. Can you take us back in time to young Stefon, right? What was he feeling? What did he know for sure in those lessons?
I'm a little emotional because my private teacher is in the hospital right now. He just had a stroke just 2 days ago.
Sorry to hear that.
But why am I emotional? The reason I'm emotional is because I got to spend time one-on-one with a real genius. My private teacher growing up absolutely changed my life. I was a little kid who taught himself to read music. I played all the band instruments, clarinet. I played sousaphone in marching band. I played bassoon. I played string bass in orchestra. I played like 20 instruments as a kid. But it was just me running around because I loved music. It wasn't focus. And showed up for the first lesson. And it was incredible. The first lesson, he opened up a score. I think it was Beethoven 7. And he taught me about sonata allegro form. And he also has a doctorate in physics.
Oh, wow.
So he started to talk about the overtone series. And I'm a little kid. And I left that lesson and I cried because I couldn't follow everything. And this is the first time. I was always winning at music. And I wouldn't sleep every morning. Even when I was a little kid, I was trying to practice every day.
Right.
And this was the first time that I came into a situation where I was like, I don't quite understand. And somehow I dug deep and I came back the next week and I understood and it all became more clear. And then Richard asked me to meet him on the plaza a week later. And he just wanted to have lunch and talk to me. And he pulled me aside and he said that I was going to be the most important person in his life for the next 5 years.
Wow.
And that he was going to dedicate, and that he was going to dedicate all of his brilliance to unlocking the potential that he sees in me. Now, if we could have that type of experience for our young people, where you have this type of one-on-one, where you have someone who is carrying a gift and a vision to look at our young people, see their potential, and understand that their gift, their challenge in life is to realize what's necessary to unlock other people's potential. Without those type of private lessons, I'm not even talking about music. I'm talking about being seen.
Right.
Right? Because I'm a kid who grew up in the hood. There was, well, I walked into that audition and everyone was surprised when I was a little kid. But not Richard. Richard just listened. He felt my spirit and he understood that I was carrying something unique. Even before I fully understood it. It was fun, it was joyful, but then I started to realize that I could perceive things that many people couldn't. I could feel things and I could intuit it. So I just wish that everyone could have mentors like that. And it's part of the reason that I'm so dedicated to mentorship to this day. And I understand that I teach music, but really I'm just using music as a tool to teach empathy. I'm trying to teach people to listen to others and even more importantly, learn to listen to their authentic self. And music is a phenomenal tool to do that.
That's beautiful. If you can humor me for just a minute, Can you speak directly to those young musicians at the New Jersey Symphony and around the world? Just speak directly to them, just in case they don't have someone who can hear them and see them. What do you want them to know?
Well, I think fundamentally the thing that I would want this next generation to know is that they're right. That what they feel about the world, what they care about is absolutely correct. And that my perspective doesn't give me the ability to see what they can see about the world. And they're a part of this big narrative. So I want them to have the confidence, the conviction, but then do the hard work to develop the skills to prove your point.
Sure.
But your point, what you care about, the way you think about the workplace, what you're going to say you refuse to put up with, good. Take a stand, but then do the work that's necessary to find other ways to contribute to society if you're not going to go down that path. But so I just want them to believe in themselves, and one of the best spaces to let go of outside perspectives is in the music. When you let go, when you're performing music, there is not a moment where you have mental space or the emotional capacity to think about the future or to think about the past. Things are happening so fast. I don't know if there's any other activity in life where all the parts of your brain are firing at the same time. That's what happens on a neurological level when we're playing music. So I love the thought of students being able to really let go, no judgment, just breathe, experience it on a whole other level. And then from that space, it should build confidence. It should build conviction. It's a time in your development where you really get to let go and just breathe. If you can't tell, I love music.
Exactly. The New Jersey Symphony is thinking about the future and envisioning a future that is collaborative with community connections, that is diverse, that is overflowing with talent and music and impact. What are your thoughts on the future of classical music and in this work?
Well, it's interesting. It's not just classical music. It's just art in general. In order for us to really build a sustainable future, I think we're going to have to address the overemphasis on what we think of as excellence and elitism. Really, for a sustainable future, we need to put art in the hands of as many people as possible. You're always going to have extremely gifted elite artists. You're born with it, you cultivate it, that's inevitable.
That's right.
But the only way that those artists become iconic and are able to have a sustainable career is because other people see themselves reflected in them. Other people are trying to do what it is that they're doing. So I love the idea of having community orchestras that are not professional musicians, right?
Right.
Just giving everyone a tool to help them express themselves, to help them relieve the stress that they're going through in life, whatever it is that they need to get off of their hearts. Like, we should be celebrating that tool.
Right.
And I think there are programs that the New Jersey Symphony has been working on where they're bringing amateur musicians together with the professional musicians in real time. Those are incredibly transformative moments for the people in the community. And I think it's also potentially incredibly transformative for the professional musicians, because you start to see, I have this talent. What is this talent actually good for? Is it just to recreate some piece of music from 100 years ago? Actually, I'm sitting next to, on stage right now, with some people who they may be a driver, they may be a cook, they may be a lawyer. I'm sitting next to them, and all of the skills that I've cultivated in my life are manifesting right now to help unlock potential in them. Maybe my art is more valuable than I even understand. So I see the benefit on both sides. And if we have more and more people participating in the arts without the judgment of good or bad, I think that's how we're going to build a sustainable future.
Maybe the art is more valuable than any of us can understand. And yet, it's worth trying.
Absolutely.
It's worth trying. Stefon Harris, we are so thankful to share this time with you, to share this world with you. to share this music with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's really my pleasure.
Residents of the greater Newark community can attend New Jersey Symphony concerts and sit in the best available seats for only $25. Come home to your New Jersey Symphony. For concert details and tickets, visit njsymphony.org/Newark Neighbors. Orchestrating Impact, Stories from the Heart of New Jersey Symphony was produced by New Jersey Symphony and ABF Creative. The New Jersey Symphony team includes Marshall Jones-Kumaha, Greta Polsky, and Jeff Anderson. The team from ABF includes Wanda Reynolds, Anthony Frazier, Mike Biseglia, Rondell Patterson, and Misty Avenger. Video lead by Audio Ash. I'm Jamara Wakefield. Thank you for watching and listening.